Germany's government is calling Saturday's ramming attack in Berlin an act of Islamic terror. Police are searching for evidence from the evening attack on the city's annual Pride celebration, which killed one person and injured many others. Police are searching for this man in connection with the ramming. The authorities are warning the public to avoid direct contact with the suspect, saying he may be armed and dangerous. Chancellor Friedrich Merz says all efforts will be made to find those responsible and tells those taking part in Pride events in Germany that they should not be intimidated. I'm Michael Oku. This is DW News. A manhunt is underway here in Berlin after a van was driven into a crowd at the annual Pride parade. Germany's interior minister says it was an act of Islamist terror. One person has died and another 29 were injured in the latest of a series of similar vehicular attacks over the past decade. Beyond the search for the suspect, many are asking how this could happen again.
The morning after the deadly van ramming attack on Berlin's Pride parade, police are combing the city's Tiergarten Park, not far from where the vehicle used in the attack was discarded after it crashed into a tree. Authorities have launched a manhunt for a suspect, Abdul B. They say he may be armed and dangerous and are warning the public to avoid direct contact. Investigators identified Abdul B as a suspect just hours after the attack.
Based on the investigators' initial findings, we have already identified a suspected perpetrator. Measures are already underway against the suspect, who has not yet been arrested. However, this individual is known to the police. He is known to us as someone associated with the Islamist circles in Berlin, and our search for him is continuing with full intensity.
It happened around 10 p.m. local time. The closing party of Pride Week, known as Christopher Street Day, was in full swing. The parade of some 600,000 revelers and 80 trucks had made its way through downtown Berlin and arrived at Tiergarten Park, near the Brandenburg Gate. That's when a white van drove through the park, ramming through the crowd. Witnesses describe what they saw.
We just heard a loud bang, so we definitely knew that there had been a collision. And then we looked over and saw countless patrol cars driving past us, around us, and right next to us. About 5 minutes later, there was a dull thud, followed by a few loud screams. At first, we couldn't tell what was going on because of the party and the music and the atmosphere, and we only realized later exactly what was happening when the police, armed with machine guns, cleared the park.
By 10:15 p.m., organizers called off the event and asked people to go home and avoid the route through the park.
We didn't see any signs of panic breaking out. We immediately heard the helicopters and the police. And we immediately received an announcement. I'm a little hoarse because I've had to talk a lot today. We immediately received a very professional announcement explaining how we should handle such situations. And we reacted immediately and activated our evacuation plan right away.
A large-scale response by first responders transported the injured to area hospitals. This is the 10th deadly vehicle ramming incident in Germany since 2016. Attackers have targeted Christmas markets, pedestrian zones, and street events. Authorities have added preventative measures such as temporary barriers, but reconciling tight security and public access remains a difficult balancing act. That openness is something Germany's Chancellor says must be maintained. Friedrich Merz posted this message on social media this morning. We are open and freedom-loving, and we will preserve and defend that. The act will be investigated and pursued with the utmost severity. My thoughts are with the victims and their families. I wish the injured a swift recovery and thank all emergency responders. The morning after the attack, mourners ignored concerns about the at-large suspect and laid flowers near the scene.
And German Chancellor Friedrich Merz attended a special service for victims and survivors of the attack at the Marienkirche in central Berlin. Ahead of the service, he had these words to say.
We're meeting today together because of a very sad event, an abhorrent event. My thoughts, our thoughts, are with the victims of this terrorist Islamist attack that occurred last night. My thoughts are with the friends and the families of the victims and survivors, and I wish those who have sustained injuries a swift recovery. I would like to thank the first responders and the police for intervening as quickly as possible, which could well have prevented an even worse outcome last night. And I would like to thank all of the participants of this Pride event today in Berlin, yesterday in Berlin, and across Germany. And I'd like to say to you, let us not be intimidated by these crimes. The aim of attacks like this is quite straightforward. They want to divide our society. They want to take the most important thing that we have, namely our open society, our liberal societies. On behalf of the German government, I pledge that we will do everything we can to bring those responsible to justice as quickly as possible. And we will be thinking about consequences, but we will respond in a resolute, clear-headed manner. These extremists have not got any place at all at the heart of our society, and we will not allow this poison of terrorism and this poison which attempts to sour and destroy our freedom to spread in our society. Quite above and beyond party political differences, we will all defend the freedom of our society, and everyone can count on that. There are more of us. We are stronger. And we will stand together in this country. That is the most important thing in such a difficult time. So let me just say it once again. The liberty, the freedom, the openness of our lifestyles and our societies is something we will defend with everything we have. And together we will prevail. Thank you for your attention.
Let's go to our reporter following the aftermath of this incident, Bernd Wiegert. Bernd, what do we make of the comments from the German Chancellor?
Well, the Chancellor reiterated again that he and his government want to do everything they can to protect the German society against these kinds of terror attacks and to unite the country and to defend freedom. And in the church, in that service, he addressed also the queer community, especially, and said he will do everything, he said, to protect that community, so whatever it takes. At the same time, there was a vigil, commemorative event going on at Brandenburg Gate. And there, the people went a little bit in disbelief. They say they heard that again and again, these promises from politicians, and they don't think they made good on these promises yet, because also they say the federal government is not protecting the queer community as it used to be, and that the mood in the society is a little bit shifting. And this was not the only or the first incident in connection with Pride events in Germany in the last years. So, yeah, there is a little bit of conflict here, and we will see how the German Chancellor wants to solve this problem in the future.
As you know, the Chancellor spoke outside a special service for the victims and survivors of Saturday night's attack. What can you tell us about the service itself?
Well, there were many people from the head of states and also from the state of Berlin, the Land Berlin, the Bürgermeister and some dignitaries, also half of the federal cabinet, and many people representing the churches in Germany, and also some representatives from the Muslim community, and all of them, of course, were there to demonstrate that they vigorously reject all these attacks and that they want to unite the country and defend people against terrorism, and that there is no whatever reason there can be to commit such heinous crimes. This was a display of unity and solidarity. But as I said, we have seen these memorial services before, and now we have to see if there will be action. Mm.
You've already referenced the dissatisfaction that some in the LGBTQ community are feeling about the way the government is handling their issues. How is the community at large in Berlin and Germany reacting to this horrendous attack? Many people must be in a state of shock.
Yeah, there's, of course, shock here in Berlin. People were celebrating, and then came this tragedy over them. There was a lot of sadness and mourning today. The city is quieter, of course, because all parties were cancelled, at least the public ones. And now people are thinking, how can this happen? And they ask, why is this happening? As I said, it's not the first time we have seen such car ramming incidences in the past years. And people are asking, why can you not prevent this? And now the federal prosecution is saying it is a terrorist attack. It is an Islamist terrorist attack again. So the question will be, what can the federal government or what can the authorities do against this? Abdul, the suspect, still at large, may have had people who worked with him. He had contacts to the Islamist scene here in Berlin. He tried to travel to countries where he could join the so-called Islamic State, IS. He was deported from Lebanon to Germany. He was sentenced in Germany to a prison sentence, but on parole, so he was still not in prison. And people now are asking, how can that be? As an individual that was supposedly dangerous is still at large.
Authorities saying he was clearly radicalized. You were on the scene last night, shortly after the attack. What can you tell us about that?
Well, of course, there was a lot of confusion first, and then the police cordoned off the area. The van actually ran into a part of the Tiergarten Park in the middle of Berlin, which was not part of the actual Pride compound. It was an area next to that, so there were no blockades or barriers that hindered the car from entering this footpath, actually, and then the car ran through the woods. Some people got hit by the car directly, and then the driver got out with a machete, with a big knife, and injured just bystanders and people that were trying to help. And he injured 29 people altogether. One woman died, and 3 people who were in hospital with life-threatening injuries are now off the hook. You can say that they will survive. That's a little good message today. They are not in life-threatening condition anymore.
We know that the suspect is on the run. As you mentioned, there is a manhunt underway. The investigation, of course, is ongoing. We know also that there will be a press conference the police will give in a little over 15 minutes from now. But until we get more information from that press conference, Bernd, tell us, what do you know about the latest in police attempts to find him?
Well, the manhunt operations ongoing. We don't know the results yet. The police searched the home of the suspect and was questioning families, neighbors to find more links and evidence, and also to find out if he was acting alone or had some helpers. 3 men were arrested briefly and then questioned, and as we understand, 2 of them are now free again and 1 is still in police custody. The manhunt is not taking place only in Berlin, but also in the whole of Germany. All borders are now, all border controls are now checking if Abdul tries to leave the country. And there was a wanted thing issued this morning by the federal prosecution with a photo and his name, and people are warned not to contact him directly, but to call the police if you see that man.
Bernd, do authorities have any advice for anyone who might see someone matching the description of that prime suspect, Abdul B. What's the message to Berlin residents?
Well, the message is this: he is still dangerous. He might have weapons, more knives, or even some guns. And the Interior Minister, the Home Affairs Minister, Alexander Dobrindt, says it could also be that he still plans to commit more acts of violence. There are many Pride events going on in Germany, and security for these events is now heightened. The police is saying, and also the prosecution, if you encounter a man who looks like Abdul, don't speak to him, call the police, and don't try to do things at your own.
Bernd Riegert, many thanks, Bernd. And earlier, Interior Minister Alexander Dobrindt visited the scene of the attacks and spoke to the media.
Everything you see around you shows that this was a terrorist attack. An Islamist terrorist attack, we must assume. We know that the suspect, Abdul Balod, is a fugitive at the moment. And this is important because it means that we have a major police hunt of all of the police officers at our disposal, both the Berlin police as well as the national police, not just in Berlin, but at the stations and the airports and the borders of Germany.
We mentioned there will be a police press conference in about 15 minutes, but we've just heard that that has been postponed. We'll certainly keep you updated. When there is one, we will certainly try to bring it to you live. Meanwhile, Hans-Jakob Schindler is a senior director at the Counter-Extremism Project. He's also a former coordinator of the UN Security Council's Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, and Taliban monitoring team. I asked him about the current threat scenario in Germany. Is this primarily about Islamist extremism, lone actor violence, or a mix of factors?
Look, I mean, first of all, the methodology of the attacks that we have seen in the last years, really, is predominantly lone actors. Lone actors, however, only alone in the perpetration of the act of violence. Online, these individuals all have been very well connected, and I'm quite sure once we know a little bit more about the perpetrator, we'll figure out one more time that he has a big online footprint that points to that radicalization. Secondly, we have a complex threat picture in Germany. So we are surrounded as Europe from multiple conflict zones, all of which, of course, permeate into the domestic security situation in Europe, but also in Germany. The Ukraine war, the war in Lebanon, the war in Gaza against Hamas, the war against the Islamic regime in Iran, and then we have a massive zone of IS and Al-Qaeda expansion in sub-Sahara Africa, which is also in the European neighborhood. Living in a social media environment means all of these conflicts immediately also transfer into Germany.
Hans-Jakob, a question that people have already been asking: why do these vehicle attacks keep recurring in Germany? Is it as simple as morbidly as it sounds, it's simple, or is there something that makes public events or urban spaces here vulnerable?
Well, first of all, this is the clear advice of the Islamic State and other terror groups for perpetrators that either connected to them or simply want to be inspired by them. It's their practical advice to do vehicular attacks because vehicular attacks are very deadly and very difficult to prevent. We've seen from what we know now from last night that the actual event of the CSD on the big street leading up to the Brandenburg Gate was physically very well protected. And I'm sure if the perpetrator had seen a chance, he would have attacked it on that big street because there were cameras rolling, and he did choose to attack people going to and from the event, which demonstrates one more time how really difficult it is to secure not only the event itself, but also access and exit points to these events. And then he also followed, allegedly, it is now confirmed that he had a machete, a big knife with him. The other advice that ISIS gives is saying not only take a vehicle, take a secondary weapon with you. If you ram down people, your vehicle is going to fail or you're going to crash get out and then harm more people with your secondary weapon. The perpetrator in New Orleans in December 2024, 2025, did exactly that with a gun. He ran down people with a car and then had a gun to kill more people.
I think it's safe to say that people are scratching their heads, or they certainly will be when they learn more about this particular suspect, will be scratching their heads, wondering how this attack could have happened. Police didn't only know of the suspect. He was apparently a chronic offender, arrested in Syria after traveling there in 2025, repatriated back to Berlin. Allegations he was planning an attack. In May this year, he was sentenced to 22 months. Officials have described him as radicalized. In fact, he was going to enter a program to de-radicalize and was out on parole. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, look, terror attacks happen when things go wrong. Now, as far as the de-radicalization specialists are concerned, they had the impression he was well-adjusted. Someone who is born in Germany, it's not really hard to pretend to be well-adjusted. But they, too, seem to have done a wrong assessment. So we have the judiciary who gives him early release and commutes the sentence. We have the security forces who know that's a dangerous individual, but we don't know yet why. Don't have as close eye on him as possible to prevent that attack. And then we have the de-radicalization specialists who say he's a well-adjusted individual. So it's multiple layers of security where things, at least from what we know now, did not seem to go as intended.
How do authorities go about identifying whether a suspect had enablers, online contacts, even if there's no obvious cell behind the attack? What do they do?
Well, first of all, there were multiple, more than one, as far as I understand, mobile phones found in the car. These, of course, are now getting electronically exploited. The guy was on the radar, so I'm sure they at least know some of his social media profiles already, and they will look at it. Apparently this morning, the neighbors claimed he'd openly talked about attacking the CSD within the neighborhood. It needs to be checked whether any one of the neighbors actually informed the security forces beforehand that that was the intentions of the individual. So, as I said, there are a lot of unanswered questions, but if everything works as intended, terror attacks are prevented, they don't happen.
Again, this person was someone that authorities knew, suspected of ill doings. Walk me through the thinking of law enforcement in terms of the extent to which you monitor that person, particularly when you know big public events are on the horizon.
Yeah, so first of all, your legal instruments are fairly limited. If the perpetrator is released from prison, he is deemed innocent, having finished his sentence. His sentence was commuted to probation, which means you cannot actually take any very serious steps unless you have a clear indication that he is concretely preparing another crime. Otherwise, you have legal restrictions of what you can and cannot do, which is absolutely justifiable in a free and democratic society. You don't want people to be arrested and questioned on mere hunches that something may be happening. The question is, how much concrete information was there that he specifically targets the CSD? Then you have to understand this was a massive event, and there was a lot of threats coming from the right-wing extremist side as well. So you had the challenge of having to look not at one, but at dangerous individuals from multiple extremist milieus that you had to monitor who may be willing to attack the big CSD event, either the march or the final event. So it then becomes a question also, where do you put the resources? And if you have the judiciary releasing it, if you have the de-radicalization prevention specialist saying he's a well-adjusted individual, this could be one reason why you downgrade your risk assessment of this individual, unless, and we just don't know, if they got a tip-off that he actually intends to target a CSD. Then, of course, quite a few serious questions will have to be answered by the police and security forces. Why they did not at least stop the individual for a traffic check as soon as he was getting into a car that night.
We live in an open society. This is not a police state. There's only so much that authorities can do, but what should Germany be doing differently now if it wants to reduce the risk of the next attack?
Look, what specifically in this case needs to be adjusted, we still don't have enough information to say we don't even have the perpetrator in custody yet. However, there is, of course, a glaring gap that many specialists have been, including myself, have been talking about for a while. I'm very sure that this individual will have a massive social media profile again. That means the gap in monitoring is, on the one hand, from the outside, the security forces. They do need finally to get the right legal framework that allows them to effectively monitor from the outside. But in a mass data environment and a free society, this cannot work effectively unless the platforms themselves will have to be legally required, who own all the data, who organize and analyze all the data all the time for commercial purposes, if they are not required to also monitor for dangerous individuals and, in case of a suspicion, give a warning to the security forces. Much like everyone accepts that the financial industry does for the last 20 years when it comes to tax evasion, terrorism financing, other financial crimes.
Got it. That's Hans-Jakob Schindler. As ever, many, many thanks, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
Moving on to the relentless fires in Western Europe, large parts of both Spain and France are dealing with huge wildfires that have been burning for days. The blazes had already displaced 500,000 people. Tens of thousands more were ordered to leave their homes as the fires close in on cities, including the Spanish capital Madrid and Bordeaux in southwestern France. Bordeaux's mayor said there are no immediate plans to evacuate its 270,000 residents, for now, at least.
The middle of the night in the village of Marche-Prime, close to Bordeaux. French police going door to door, even climbing over roofs and fences to wake residents and tell them to leave immediately as the wildfires bear down on their homes. After thousands were told to evacuate yesterday, another 55,000 people have now been told to leave their homes in communities surrounding Bordeaux, many of them clearly distressed.
We want our home back. The children are anxious. They're not doing well at all. They're not okay. And we're constantly looking after them.
While others tried to see the positives in a difficult situation.
Everything has gone very well here. I've found an extraordinary sense of solidarity that I hadn't expected, and great kindness from the staff and all the workers who are helping out. It's amazing.
Visiting an evacuation centre, Bordeaux's mayor denied media reports that the entire city was to be evacuated.
There's no evacuation of Bordeaux on the agenda, I'll say it again. Here, the fire is more to the south. It's still on the edge of the metropolitan area.
But he added that Bordeaux was, quote, ready for anything. And with the fires already encroaching on the outskirts of the historic city, that could mean total evacuation is still on the cards for Bordeaux.
DW's Tessa Valta is close to the scene of the fires, where she's also spoken to firefighters. She sent us this update.
So right behind me, you can see one house that the firefighters couldn't save, and we are just around about 20 kilometers west of Bordeaux, so very close to the city. And here the fire has raged immensely. The entire house is destroyed. You can see the car that has been hit as well. And I'm having a hard time breathing here because you can feel the smoke in the air, and we can also still feel the heat from the ground because the flames haven't passed too long ago.
A reminder of the main story we're following for you this hour. Police in Berlin and all around Germany are searching for the driver that rammed his vehicle into a crowd at the city's annual Pride March. Federal authorities are calling it an act of Islamist terror, citing the suspect's links to Islamism. Police have identified the suspect in the ramming as 21-year-old Abdul B and described him as having a slim build and black hair. Authorities say he has a criminal record and may be armed and dangerous. Chancellor Friedrich Merz has just spoken about the car ramming at the Berlin Pride Parade. Merz said participants in Pride events in Germany should not be intimidated. He said authorities would do everything possible to find those responsible. We'll end it there. I'm Michael Oku. Thanks for joining us.